Welcome to news. We have lots to discuss. It's way worse than I thought. This is news for the poor. Welcome. Today we're going to be educational. On Tuesday of this week, so 11/12/24, I happened to listen to the Realignment podcast. I like it. I like Marshall and Czar. They're enjoyable to listen to. They're very insightful. It's a great podcast. You should listen to it. But on Tuesday, Marshall solo had on Khanna, the congressman, the distinguished gentleman from California, San Francisco, to discuss why they lost the election and how the Democratic Party can rebrand itself. And what are their plans for the future? And I have the transcript of the entire conversation right here. Front and back, you can see this will be educational. Maybe a little scary when you see the frontier, the vision that the Democratic Party has for you and me. We're going to start out when Roe comes in and kind of tells us a little bit about himself. I was born in Philadelphia, grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania in the 1980s, and if you had told me in the 80s that we would have an African-American, Indian-American woman who would become the Democratic nominee and get 48% of the vote in Pennsylvania, I would have said, no, you're crazy. No one would get over 30. So we made tremendous progress. Just in this skin, the preference of skin tone, I guess. That's their goal. That's the number one thing, is to get somebody who's not white, I guess, into the Oval Office. Even though that happened already, we're aware that this happened twice. But whatever. We like to rewrite history around here. I don't know if you've been on the internet lately. We like to rewrite the history. Now,
why were we not able to get over the finish line? We have to recognize that a large slice of Americans, not just working class Americans,
a large slice of Americans. So let's rewind that.
Not just working class Americans, a large slice of Americans.
So he just said that he believes, I guess, that working class Americans are the minority of America. They're not. Working class Americans don't make up 99.9% of the population. But we digress. He's smarter. He went to Yale. Does he really think that working class Americans are the minority? They're economically struggling. Which means, because in a modern economy, which is somehow different, any modern economy which is somehow different from an archaic one, the one we had before, I don't know how that changed.
They feel that the American dream has slipped away from their family and kids. Their kids can't buy a house, can't buy a car, and we did not, one, convey that the central issue of inequality of opportunity in this country was at stake, and that we have bold proposals for how we're going to address that. And that, to me, has to be the mission for the Democratic Party, to address the vast majority of Americans who are struggling economically.
Struggling economically? Economically struggling is when you're making like $15 an hour, but it would be better if you make 21. That's economically struggling. He's describing homelessness. That's economically struggling to him. See, we're out of touch here. That gets worse. Don't worry. It gets better or worse. Depends on if you live in reality or you live in the fantasy land. Where Monopoly... Farkas, what are you doing? fuck's going on? Are these cats Democrats? Kamala send these cats so I wouldn't read this transcript. I'm reading it anyway. This needs done. Jesus. Actual voters, hold on. They have bold proposals. So a proposal is just like I tell you I have a good idea. Okay, I have a good idea. So the Democrats have bold, good ideas, they think, for how we're going to address this homelessness thing. And that, to me, has to be the mission of the Democrats, to address that. So they have to talk about their bold proposals, and then their mission is for them to come and tell us more about how their bold proposals are somehow different than the ones before. We get to the bold proposals here soon. Okay, this is Marshall coming back. If we talk to actual voters, as opposed to fake ones, I guess, and
You and I both do this, me in a podcasting sense, and you as a member of Congress.
yeah, those two things are the same.
If you talk to voters, the way they would articulate that economic picture is really focusing on inflation.
The other ghosty, villain-y thing that nobody understands, but just happens. We just have it. It's like fleas. These cats, they're like inflation and racism. I can't get rid of them. I don't know how. Maybe it's because I like them. Maybe I like to pet racism and inflation here. Racism. Racism Farkas is his name. And this one is Punky Inflation. They're good cats. They're Democrats. He cries a lot, so we know he's the one that does the bold proposals, makes claims, and wants to talk to you about honest conversations that we need to have in this country about misogyny.
Poor people, how can you still not just blindly vote for who we put in front of you?
Moving on, back to inflation. This wild, crazy, villainous inflation that nobody understands and can't find. Why aren't these on America's Most Wanted? Why aren't these on the FBI's top 10 most wanted? Racism and inflation. We need to get these guys. Look what they're doing to us all.
The poor people now understand that there's something called inflation.
What do we think about that, thought leader?
Something I really worry about when it comes to the ambitions of both parties is that the story we're going to tell ourselves coming out of the mid-2020s is that inflation, spending, and acting boldly is going to actually be something you want to avoid. So how do you think about the dynamics of the need to go bold? But also recognizing we're probably going to have an incredibly skeptical set of the electorate when it comes to spending or any projects like that.
Projects like spending. Is spending just a... spending, yeah, it is. Spending is a project all on its own.
The Office of Spending. We need to get it up. We're not spending enough.
So this is Roe again.
The fact that grocery prices were up, the fact that gas prices were up, I think just exacerbated people's sense
That for the last 50 years,
So somebody's entire life span, he just said that, for the last 50 years,
wages have stagnated, communities have been hollowed out.
and he just said this has been going on for what is essentially a human lifetime, definitely of working age, so more than somebody's entire full career.
We've had stagnant wages, and communities have been hollowed out.
So if you are 68 today, and you, right out of high school, went to work at 18, you have never experienced anything resembling the marketing genius of the American dream. And you never will. That is a fiction. It never existed. And if it did, it was by accident. Until they got the cogs rolling. See, we weren't working efficiently enough. That's the problem. We don't work like an ant colony. We're to blame. Not them. Of course not. This guy's an economic surgeon. Don't you know? I don't know how you do surgery on a dollar. When you're spending 35 trillion. But we get to that. Here, hold on. Economic wealth has been concentrated in districts like mine.
In districts like mine! Worship me! While other places have not had economic growth. And that has been the story of the last 50 years. A decline of many Americans' economic condition.
That pesky old homelessness condition.
And once they saw that, okay, now I'm not even being able to pay the grocery bills.
This guy still gets fucking grocery bills. Grocery bills? What's a grocery bill? We don't all have private fucking chefs that go do our shopping for us, cook all of our meals for us, follow us around, wipe our ass, and then we have to write a check at the end of the month for $25,000. That's this guy's grocery bill. We go and slide our cards, or cash, but that's going away soon too, because they have to control it. We need more control over all this. You have to trust our vision for the future. It's so wonderful with the Democratic Party.
Have to pay the grocery bills, or the rent, or utilities.
That's homelessness. Again. When you can't pay your grocery bills, you know that they send you from the grocery at the end of the month. Because you just walk in and take shit on credit, I guess. And you can't pay your rent, and you can't pay your utilities, well, that certainly exacerbates your homelessness condition. It just highlighted the frustration.
A broader frustration of the loss of the American dream.
What is with all the prepositional additions on the back end of sentences? Is it not confusing enough yet? Have you not spoken in enough circles already? Do we need to tack on a few more at the end? So we're thoroughly dizzy? So I feel like I'm gonna vomit every time you speak? You blacks, Jews. I just can't stop. It's like, Jews! Blacks! Gays! Blacks! This is what white guys do all day. This is what we do. We come out to our barns, and then we have our Tourette's fits for 8 or 9 hours. Gay! Black Jew! Gay! Black Jew! Gay Black Jew! Gay Black Jew! That's racism for you. It's like a disease. I need to be punished. Cut off my grocery bills. Cut off my grocery credit.
We have to be honest with folks. That there are two things we need to do to address this.
So there are two things we need to do just to talk about it. One, we have to create more good paying, high paying, good jobs across America. This is going to require federal investment to build new modern factories, to build new apprenticeship programs for those who may not have a 4-year degree.
To be able to become the world's top producer again.
The world's top producer again. So he just admitted that China's GDP is higher. We all knew that, going all the way back to 2008. Somebody's been cooking the books on the GDP number. They just make it up. It's just made up. An expert does it. So an expert that's thoroughly corrupt is paid, obviously, to tell all of us plebs, all of us idiots, all of us cogs, black stews, that what was I talking about? Pay him to be more corrupt. Ouch! Ouch! Farkas. They gotta pay him to be more corrupt, to lie to us pleb cogs
that we're still better than China because this number's higher than that one.
We've been losing that race since the housing crisis.
The world's top producer again, but that is going to have a productive return.
This is the transcript. This is what the guy said. I'm sorry. We're not really dealing with the top brass, if you know what I mean.
It doesn't have to be trillions of dollars.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Let's go back.
1, we have to create a more good paying, high paying, good jobs across America. That is going to require federal investment.
More federal investment. This is his new economic deal. This is called economic patriotism. Like that's a thing. This is what they do. This is called Orwellian doublespeak. If I take one word that doesn't go with another word and I slam those two things together, this word that meant this thing before and this word that meant this thing that's completely separate from this thing, those two things go together. So now I've just created a completely abstract amoeba. I'm creating a concept that I have yet to describe. So I can just backfill that story later. You see what I'm saying? This is how they do this. This is why they never want to address any crises in the media, especially from a moral standpoint, until everyone has forgotten about it. That's why the news cycle is now so fast, because people are so dumb and everybody's cameras are so on 24/7 that things can't happen to get caught. Bad stuff. You know, bad things. So we have to have a 24/7 light speed news cycle so we can hurry up and forget about all the bad stuff you did last week. So now I can address it today. And then I'll just rewrite the history of what all happened. And it doesn't really matter anyway, because I don't owe you anything. You voted me in here, now I create the laws. So, I'm going to manage you by creating concepts out of thin air, by ramming two words that don't go together to create an entirely new concept that I will backfill next week to cover up all the lies and moral platitudes and longitudes and longitudes and latitudes and platitudes, all those things that I crossed, all those moral and principled lines that I just stomp all over every day. And then I come and tell you
That we had a good meeting. I think we're really going to get something done here. We have to be inclusive with this economy. Because, you see, a modern economy is different than an archaic economy. And in the end, if you do all the math, what I want to say is this. Kamala Harris probably should have won because she's black. And you all are just racist, bigoted, misogynistic rapers. And I know for a fact that you secretly want to be a cuck.
This is all communist indoctrination, by the way. These people are Marxist as fuck. This is, okay, so what he's describing here is fascism. This is fascism. This is why they were so quick to project that everybody else was a fascist. Because we live in a fascist regime right now. They just won't tell you that. That's why the definitions of fascism are wrong on Wikipedia, and if you hit any of the hyperlinks, it gets more confusing from there. And really, the definition of fascism is actually quite easy. It's when the government controls everything. But it appears that it's a utopia. Yeah, it can have something to do with race. Whoa! That's punky inflation. Pesky inflation. Fascism isn't racist, or it ended up being racist, but there were 10,000 Jews in the original Italian fascist party. It didn't get racist or anti-Semitic until Hitler came along and started controlling everything, because that is Nazism. It's its unique brand of fascism that includes racism, anti-Semitism, cooking of books, making up of magical figures. Sound familiar? They just made up whatever. Who cares? It didn't matter because the government controlled everything in Nazi Germany. The factories on paper were still there, but the books were just cooked. It didn't matter. The government had complete and utter control of everything. So when they say they're capitalists and this is a democracy, well, fascism is a democracy. It's a representative government. You don't make any decisions. You vote people to make decisions. You don't make any. They do what they want. We live in a democracy? It's a fascist democracy then. We're all fascists.
This is going to require federal investment to build modern factories.
Governments that are non-fascist don't build factories, buddy. Why is the government building factories? Why are they building new apprenticeship programs? That's not their job. How is this their job? To build factories. Do you know what he's describing here? Fascism. Hello? This is fascism.
It doesn't have to take trillions of dollars. Just several hundred billion.
That we don't have. We don't have. You guys, what happened to the 35 trillion that we've already gone in the hole on? You want a new economic deal on the old economic deal on top of it. So you want more.
We need more federal investment. That's going to take more federal investment. This is going to take more federal investment. That's going to take more federal investment. Because we, at the government, need to pay the highest price possible for everything.
No one is there to bargain anything. There are 2.87 million federal employees, and not a single one of them has ever been tasked with cutting a cent out of a budget that has driven us to the brink of bankruptcy. Our debt to income ratio this year is 123%. At 100%, it's game over. So the only way that you even sniff solvency going forward is inflation. You have to make that $35 trillion number of less value, of less real value. So you just print 10 times the amount of cash that is currently in the market. So you just take every dollar and decrease its value by 90%. Well, there you go. Now we've just satisfied that $35 trillion number. This is what happened in the Weimar Republic, before Nazi Germany. You see, that's why there was hyperinflation, because there was no way to pay back the reparations. That's why you have stories of people taking wheelbarrowfuls of cash to buy a loaf of bread. That's why this 2-liter today is over $3, when 10 years ago it was $1, $1.25. These are up 200% in the last 10 years. It will get worse. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. But this shit, what they're talking about, openly doing, is far worse. Governments don't build factories, Ro. You went to the University of Chicago and Yale. I'm surprised they didn't teach anybody anything about political philosophy there. What you're describing is fascism, which is socialism, which is communism. We're $35 trillion in debt now. You want more money? When are we going to send in all the grain to the central building so it can't be distributed? When are we going to get the famine, buddy? When's that coming?
To build modern factories in small towns and places left behind.
So he has a plan. It's not going to take trillions of dollars to build new modern factories in small towns and places left behind. He wants to go more in debt so he can build a bunch of buildings in places left behind. Buddy, there's a reason those places have been left behind. You don't just build factories in places where there's nobody at. Because eventually it becomes what we have now. Things change. You can't keep reacting to things that have already happened. See, this is your common problem. You think that you can somehow magically control everything if we just give you more money. That's not how this works. God, you piss me. These people piss me off. How do you go to Yale and the University of Chicago and come out and start blatantly advertising that you're a fascist as a congressman? And nobody says anything but me in a fucking barn. This is hyper-normalization. Nobody cares. Let him talk however he wants to. He's not crazy or anything. Sitting congressman being an open fascist. It's not going to take $1 trillion. Should we applaud this? Should we applaud that? That he, oh my God, he said words. He addressed us. Oh my God, he did his job. He talked to us today. Oh my God, that must have been so traumatizing. Such a drain to have to talk to us poor people. To come tell us about all your fascist plans, about how we're going to have to send you more of our money so you can do with it what you will to build modern factories in places where there's nobody at. So Einstein's definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and expecting a different result. You're going to go into areas that have failed and then put magically new fucking factories there, and that's going to solve the problem. And you're an economic surgeon. You, sir, are an idiot. An idiot. And I would actually love a debate with you. I'd like to talk to you so you can clarify, because I'm a voter. I'm an American voter. And I know I'm not a Californian. I know Scott Farkas in here just in Ohio. But I would really like this language clarified, because I don't understand how a sitting United States congressman is an open fascist. That's the end of my video. I'm sure I won't get a response. But I'd like one.